Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Remember, if you love film or television content, please consider clicking that subscribe button because today we are going to be talking about one of my most anticipated films of the entire year, and that is Neil Blomkamp's adaptation of Gran Turismo. So, let's get into it.
Now is your chance to race real cars.
This is insane. It's not gonna work. The guys who race are elite athletes. Your kids are scrawny little gamer kids.
That's where you come in.
So for this review, you've seen the title of this video. You know that I'm quite high on this movie, and I want to give a full justification as to why this film connects to me on a real personal level, and I really want to go through that with you. However, if you want to skip all of that and go straight into just the review of the movie, I have added chapter markers so you can skip through. Whatever you want to do, I am totally fine. You're not going to hurt my feelings, I swear. So firstly, why was I excited about this movie? The trailers and everything looked okay for sure. I have covered trailer reactions on my channel and I was definitely excited for it. It looked like it was going to be a very innovative spin on Gran Turismo, a game which I have been a lifelong fan of. This was one of the first video game series I have ever played. You see behind me Gran Turismo 4 on the PS2. That was my entry point into the series. That's the exact same copy that I started the series on, and to this day I still play it and I've worked all through the series. I am a massive fan of this entire franchise, this entire series. The racing mechanics were excellent and it just inspired a love for video games from me. So just on that alone, I was excited to see this. However, there was a massive problem that this could have had, which is the fact that Gran Turismo does not have really a story at all. For me personally, when I play it, I make up stories in my mind, and that's how I get so much more enjoyment out of it in terms of just having a role-playing experience. However, Neil Blomkamp and his team are not going to adapt what I'm making up in my head. They have to use a real story. And they went for a very innovative direction, which actually connects with something else that is really personal in my life. So also a bit of background on myself. I come from a sport development background. I graduated university with a Bachelor of Sport Development and Business. If you don't know, sport development is about finding innovative ways to promote sport and mainly get children into sport. It has always been a huge passion of mine, so much so that I went on to do an honours thesis, which I'm currently in the middle of, and the whole topic of this thesis that I am studying at a very high level and looking at all the details on is the relationship between grassroots sport and video game consumption, because I believe that video games are a huge basis for people getting into sport in the first place, as well as teaching people the rules and basic layout of every single sport out there. For me personally, I absolutely love basketball and the NBA. That wouldn't have been possible without my love for the NBA 2K franchise. I had a pretty decent love of cars, and that spawned from Gran Turismo. And this movie, the story that they use following Jan here, is an example that I actually utilize in my paper. So I know this story pretty well, and honestly, just seeing this come to life in a film just kind of blew my mind and really resonates with me on a very personal level beyond just loving this series and being a movie fan. It really is starting to go into a lot of what I do in terms of research, which is just really insane. It's such a massive coincidence, but it's just really cool to see. So let's get into the review of this actual film now. I have been on record saying I'm not a fan of video game movie adaptations. I have a very high standard for them because I have such a love for video games. I'm a massive fan of the Uncharted series of video games, and I absolutely cannot stand that movie. I'm happy to be critical of these movies, especially if they're just trying to use it to make a quick buck in the theater and leave based off the IP. I really did not want them to do that with Gran Turismo because, as I mentioned, I have a very long history with this series and I have a lot of passion for it. So I really did not want them to just go for the cheap way out, and that's it. Now, I have to say, I absolutely love this movie. I'm completely blown away. I'm completely won over. I truly think, this may be recency bias, but I don't think so because video game movies don't really have a high bar in terms of what my experience with them is. but I think Gran Turismo is my favorite video game movie of all time. I think that this film was just an absolute blast to watch. Neil Blomkamp has been an excellent choice to direct this film. The other movies that he's made have a really big focus on machinery and how that's used, and he kind of puts that into Gran Turismo. What a perfect combination, because he really looks at how these cars are constructed and what makes them so powerful in this series. And I really like that element because it's a big part of the Gran Turismo franchise. But beyond that, this film looks at Jan Mardenborough, a real innovative person who was one of the first people to go through the Gran Turismo Academy, which is basically combining the simulation mechanics of the Gran Turismo game, which are really robust, and utilizing that technology in the Nismo GT Academy to become a real-life race car driver. David Harbour plays a coach here who doesn't really believe that this is going to work, and it's just a really interesting story. It's fascinating in a lot of ways how this can translate into real life use. And once again, going back to my research, that's exactly what I'm looking at here. How that actually translates from playing a video game to really teaching them how cars work, how the track works. And the way that Neil Blomkamp really implements that into the story here was just really well done. It took a lot of thought to bring this to life. You can tell from the minute that this film starts that they genuinely care about Gran Turismo and its ability to teach young drivers how to get on the track and race. Also, if you are a lifelong fan of this series like I am, there are just so many little Easter eggs that are just so cool to see. Basically, all of the tracks that are utilized in the film are all in Gran Turismo. There are song choices in here that are in Gran Turismo, and there's just all these little visual motifs and sound effects that all come from Gran Turismo. And as someone who just loves this series, it was just really cool to see play out on the big screen. And it's not gimmicky by any means. I think they all fit into the film really well because Neil Blomkamp is really careful about going over the line here in terms of just giving you a bunch of fan service over a great story, because I think this has a really good story. You genuinely care about these people that are involved in this really interesting true story, and that is what makes this a great film. It's more than just member berries and Easter eggs. We need to get into the race scenes because they're also really brilliant. I haven't seen racing shot this well since Ford v Ferrari. Truly, the cinematography once again resembles a lot of Gran Turismo in a lot of the camera angles it goes for. Not just in the racing, but also in the B-spec modes that were featured in previous Gran Turismo games. It really translates well to a film. And not just that, you also get put into the seat of the driver in a lot of ways. It makes for some really intense racing. You definitely feel a sense of danger, that playing a video game isn't everything to get the skills up. Of course, you actually need to be behind the wheel to learn a lot of what racing is. And it really showcases that in interesting ways. It puts these characters into their place a little bit in a lot of ways where they really need to take this seriously. And the way that this film wants to showcase that, I think, made a good mark on this film and added a lot of weight to it. Now, let's get into the performances, because from the trailer, they don't look too great. And I also need to mention, the trailer is an okay representation of what the movie is. At first, I thought that they had shown too much, but there's actually a whole lot of stuff in here that wasn't in the trailer, and I think they left out the best parts of this movie. So if you're unimpressed by the trailer, please go watch it, because this is still a really great movie, even if you aren't a fan of Gran Turismo. There is some great drama in here. There are some good performances in here. I think across the board, they're all pretty good. Now, the lead, played by Archie Metakiwe, I think it is. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. He's pretty good throughout the movie. I think he does have a couple of weak points in basically the weakest or most disposable element of this film, which I think is the whole relationship arc. I kind of thought that that would be the case from my trailer reactions, but it still serves the film nicely. But I think if we were to tighten the runtime, those elements could have been taken out and it wouldn't have left that much of an impact on the story. And I think that's where we get kind of the more cringier elements to his performance. However, there are some big dramatic moments that this film asks him to deliver on, and he does a really good job of that. So I think overall, it's a great performance, and he adds a lot of depth to this film. Then obviously the more household names in this, David Harbour is really great in this supporting role. He's kind of this mean coach. You see it in a lot of sports movies. It's his take on it, and he does a really good job of it. You also have Orlando Bloom, who is basically the brains behind this entire idea. So hats off to the real person behind that, because I really think it is a very innovative way of getting a lot of new kids into sport where they probably wouldn't have been before. However, he really delivers on a pretty good performance. He's not in the film too much. He's in it enough where he can leave an impact, but it was more focused on David Harbour and Archie's performance, and they both really deliver. Their chemistry is excellent. I love the dynamic between the characters, and you really feel for them by the time we hit the end of the film. Also, I think the stunt work is pretty impressive. If you didn't know, the real person that this is based off, Jan Mardenborough, he is actually the stunt driver in a lot of these scenes. And I just thought that was a really cool thing to include, to really give him his dues in this film. Also, just want to give a shout out to Jaimin Hunsu in this film. He's not in it a whole lot, but it almost seems like he wants to go for an Oscar here. Obviously, he probably won't, just for the type of film that this is. But he has a really emotional scene that I thought was excellent. It captured a beautiful moment in the movie. And that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't had such a great actor behind this role. So hats off to him just for showing up for these couple of scenes and really delivering. I mean, there's not too much more that I can add without spoiling it. It's just a really great film that starts off really paying homage to Gran Turismo and being a real love letter to fans of this game, which I think is what a video game movie should be. It should show that these people behind this actually care about what they're making. And in this case, they truly do, because it quickly moves on from giving you that fan service, giving you that love for the series, and actually developing its own story that is really beautifully crafted. Took me by complete surprise. Even though I was excited for this, I didn't have the craziest expectations for it, and it really delivered a lot more than what I was expecting. To be honest with you, because this touches me on such a personal note with my love of Gran Turismo and my current research, kind of giving me a good kick up the arse to keep writing and really keep exploring this connection between video games and grassroots sport, because this film is just a beautiful example of that. And for that reason, this is definitely one of my favorite movies of the year. I didn't think I'd be saying that in this review, and it is probably the best video game movie I have ever seen. I cannot wait to watch this again. This has been delayed due to the writers and SAG strike in America. So American audiences, when you get this film, please go out and support it. It is a great film. This is the type of stuff that should be supported in terms of the video game genre. Not shit like Uncharted, shit like this that actually cares, shows true passion, and wants to craft a brilliant story with great technical work that I just cannot help but applaud. This film, I was really close to giving a 5 out of 5, but I do think that the film is a little bit too long. We could have cut out a couple of scenes to make it even tighter, so I'd probably just give it a 4.5 out of 5. I think also there is a lot of bias in this review. I'm not going to bullshit you here, because this hits me on such a personal level, and that's why this film is bolstered so much more in my eyes. This may not be as great if you don't have that connection. However, the people that saw this in my screening seemed to really enjoyed it, kind of applauded in some of the moments that deserved it, and seemed like they all seemed a bit down in the sad moments. So I do think, even if you're not a crazy fan of Gran Turismo, obviously aren't studying sport development or anything like that, this is still a pretty fun racing movie that certainly delivers on some great entertainment. Anyway, those are my thoughts towards the Gran Turismo movie. Let me know in the comments below when you see this, what you think about this film. And if you haven't, are you excited for this? I really highly recommend you check it out. I have a weird feeling that this film is going to bomb because I just don't hear that much interest in it. But please go check it out. This is worth your time 100%. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.